We will call the regular meeting of the Waushara County Board of Supervisors to order. I will start out with roll call. And David Bossert is joining us virtually. All right, everybody is present. If you'd stand at this time for a silent prayer and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You all have we're sent an agenda. Is there any additions or corrections? We do have one.
Yeah, so when you get to resolution 3-1-25 for Insight Cellcom, they have asked for that to be withdrawn. They don't currently have the infrastructure to apply for a BEAD grant in this area, so we will not be taking action on that one.
Is there any other additions or corrections to the agenda? If not, I would look for a motion to approve it. Okay, motion by Mr. Gray, is there a second? Second by Mr. Piaski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it passes. You were all sent the minutes from the December 17th, 2024 regular meeting. Is there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, I would look for a motion to approve. Motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Wadle. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Urban. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Okay, hearing none, it passes. We did not get any forms for public comments tonight. And we have no unfinished business. We'll move right into new business with reports and presentations. With our first one to be the County Administrator's Monthly Report with our Administrator, Megan Gatt.
All right, thank you. So just a recap from what we've done since last month. So we did have our annual employee holiday appreciation luncheon after our last county board meeting. We had about 215 employees attend that, so it was very well received. We had a great meal catered by a local caterer from Wild Rose Main Street Station. And I want to give a huge thank you to Michelle Olson from administration who did the coordinating and planning for that, as well as Rosie from UW Extension did a lot of help with setup, cleanup, and everything for that. So thank you to those two for all their help. Also, thank you to the county board for continuing to support the employee luncheon and things like that in our budget. Again, it's super important that we do that for employees, and it is very well received. So thank you. Yesterday, our HR and risk manager, Deb Denker, coordinated an all-staff annual safety training. It included annual requirements on harassment training in the workplace, safety data sheets. We had our EMS chief, Keith Melvin, did some training on bloodborne pathogens, first aid, and stop the bleed kits. We had our emergency management director, Alan Lucchini, reviewed emergency preparedness and reminders for active threats or evacuations for employees. And then we also had Randy from our EAP firm that did some training on civility in the workplace. That training was really well received by staff. So it was a very beneficial training. So kudos to Deb for putting that together for all of our staff. Just a quick update for you all on the county clerk position. The filing deadline has passed for that. We had one candidate file that will be on the ballot in April. That candidate is Desiree, who is our current payroll and finance assistant. So assuming nobody runs a stellar writing campaign, it is likely that Desiree would be elected to the county clerk role starting in about the third week in April is when that transition would occur. So we are starting to look internally what that transition means from an administration standpoint as far as filling that role so that we're prepared there. Let's see, on the building front, Mike is working with the demolition company on the old buildings, getting those ready to start demolition beginning of February. He is working with them also to save the lettering on the north annex, the Washera County, that says Washera County Shop, to be able to move that stonework over to the new highway shop, along with the flagpole from over at the courthouse. So to save some of those pieces, they're also keeping the cornerstone and some plaques that are on the north annex building that'll go onto the monument. We have been working with the YMCA on the property transfer. We will have a formal resolution on that property transfer going to executive coming up in March. Just so those of you that are not on the facilities committee are aware, that committee did vote to relocate the 2 statues that are at the courthouse over to the World War II building in Wautoma. Let's see, other happenings, county government days. So we had about a 1-year hiatus due to the move. So we didn't do our county government days last year because everything was in boxes at the old courthouse and we were in the process of moving over here. So we are bringing that back this year. Heather Schwarzenska from Register of Deeds is coordinating the planning of that to be April 25th and April 30th. So we bring sophomores and juniors in from Tri-County, Wautoma, and Wild Rose schools, give them a tour of the building and go around from department to department to kind of learn about what some of the services are, some job opportunities, and what their county government does to serve them. So it's a good community outreach and education and coordinating with that. So we'll have a planning meeting coming up to get ready for that, planning in about mid-March. Other upcoming events, just so you're aware, we have an employee wellness fair February 12th that we're going to do in the government center atrium out here for all employees. Stephanie Eldridge from the health department is coordinating with Red Cross to do a community blood drive here at the government center February 21st, which is 9 to 2. So anybody from the community and employees are able to sign up for that. And then I'm not going to step on Tim's toes too much as he is going to be reporting on strategic planning. But I do just want to remind you that we have this SWOT analysis out to the public, out to employees and county board members. So we have it on our website. It's going to be in the paper. The SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We are asking people to complete that for any department that they have interactions with, also with for administration for any kind of general countywide comments. As part of the strategic planning initiative, we're looking to gather that feedback from constituents on what some of our strengths are, what we can do to improve, and that's going to help guide our strategic planning goals and priorities going forward. So if you've seen that link or go to the website, we would encourage everyone to fill that out as you're able. That's all I have.
Okay, very good. Does anybody have any questions for Megan? Okay, very good, thank you. All right, at this time, we'll have the clerk of courts annual report with our clerk of court, Katrina Rasmussen. Hi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katrina Rasmussen. I'm the clerk of court here in Washera County. Tonight, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the clerk of court's office does and then give you some highlights from the past year. These are the people that make up the circuit court here in Washera County. So our county has 2 judges, 2 judicial assistants, 1 court stenographer that is assigned to branch 1, and 1 digital audio reporter that is assigned to branch 2. We currently have myself, my chief deputy, and 4 deputy clerks in my office. We also have an open deputy clerk position for the family and paternity cases. The clerk of court's office is everyone's access to the courts. We maintain all of the records for the court system. We also manage the finances for the courts and manage the juries for the courts. We work closely with several different departments, such as the Child Support Agency, the District Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Department, and Probation and Parole to administer the court systems. So here's a look at our criminal and traffic filings in 2024 compared to the year prior. These are the cases that are filed by the DA's office or citations that come from the Sheriff's Department, State Patrol, and other municipal police departments. And these are the civil filings from 2024 compared to the year prior. These are the cases that are typically filed by pro se litigants, attorneys, or the child support agency. And finally, here's a look of the cases that are handled by the probate office and the filings in 2024 compared to 2023. These are the cases that are typically handled in a confidential manner. So the clerk of court's office is also responsible for handling the finances for the courts. We collect and distribute all of the fines, fees, and costs assessed by the courts. We produce reports on a daily, monthly, and annual basis. When month end is completed, the county treasurer distributes the state and county portions that we collect. We also collect and distribute restitution. This past year, we collected and dispersed over $105,000 to victims. My financial clerk works with the probation and parole office to communicate any payments that are made and balances that are owed. We also send all of our past due obligations to the state debt collection agency to collect in the event that our collection efforts are unsuccessful. This past year, they collected $174,634.99 for our office. This past year, we experienced several personnel changes. I'm happy to say in March, I hired Katie Sullivan as my chief deputy. Katie had previously worked as a corrections officer and corrections corporal in the jail prior to coming to the clerk of court's office. She's done a great job filling that chief deputy role. In July, Court Commissioner Mark Bickford retired and Attorney Joan Olson took over as our family court commissioner. And in September, our Spanish interpreter, Enrique Soria, he entered into a soft retirement and he is no longer doing in-person interpreting for our county. He was previously assigned to come 2 afternoons a month for cases that have litigants that require a translator. He continues to do remote interpreting via Zoom. But we have been fortunate enough to secure 2 new interpreters. They come on a regular monthly rotating basis for cases that require an in-person interpreter. Also over this past year, we had 3 clerks that had left for various reasons, and we had hired 3 different clerks. And at this point, we still have 1 open position. My goal for 2025 is to get the last position filled, to get all of my new deputies trained and to continue to cross-train my other deputy clerks. In 2024, we had 14 jury trials, which is a slight increase from the 12 we had the previous year. We continue to have an unprecedented number of jury trials scheduled each month, although not all of them go to trial. Another challenge that remains a problem for us is the State Public Defender's Office not appointing attorneys to eligible defendants in a timely manner. Some defendants are waiting 9 months or more for an attorney to be appointed. In 2024, we paid out over $8,200 in attorney's fees for defendants who received court-appointed counsel but were public defender eligible. We are not able to seek reimbursement for those fees due to their indigency status. So those are costs that we just have to pay out. Also, this past year, we saw a big increase in the number of appeals that were filed in our office. In the past 10 years, we've averaged 8 a year. In 2024, we had 19 appeals that were filed in Waushara County. When we have an appeal that comes through, there's very strict requirements for what the clerks have to do to prepare and send the record. This at times can be a very involved process depending on how big the file is. There's also specific time limits that we need to follow that are different for each case type. And we need to send exhibits and maintain track when those cases are finished at the Court of Appeals and when they are sent back to us to ensure that we get the exhibits back to our office and the file. So I would like to highlight some of the accomplishments that we've had in our office over the past year. In February, we started using the Tax Intercept program again, in addition to the state debt collection program. There are sometimes debts that we can't send to SDC or that they're not able to collect on, and Tax Intercept can cover some of those debts. So we collected over $5,000 through the Tax Intercept program last year. In March, I coordinated a virtual training with the Wisconsin Forensic Unit that was available to all of the clerks of court in Waushara County. The training addressed the clerk's responsibilities and processes relating to competency issues in the court system. And there were 24 counties that participated in that training. Also in March, we switched to a new financial system in CCAP for a portion of our financials. They're going to be converting the balance of that to the new system this year. In April, we finished our back scanning project just in time for the move. We scanned approximately 25,000 files in 3 years, from April 26th of 2021 to April 12th of 2024. And also in April, the Red Granite Police Department left the municipal court and returned to the circuit court. Lastly, our courtroom in the new government center was the cover photo on the December 2024 Wisconsin Counties magazine. For all of you that did not see that, that was kind of exciting. And our move to the new building was a very smooth transition. Shortly after we moved, we held a mock trial and invited courthouse employees and bailiffs to participate. This was to help us determine what things we needed to work out in the new facility before bringing in an actual jury. It also helped the bailiffs become more familiar with the new courthouse. It was a productive and fun afternoon. So these are just a couple of photos from the event. And that is all I have for you. Does anyone have any questions?
I just had one for you. Is there any reason that you can see for the added number of appeals, or is it just an anomaly, or what? Is there something going on there?
It's really tough to say. I don't know that there's a reason. I can tell you that there was one case that had 6 different appeals filed in the same case. But it's a variety of case types, so it's not just criminal. We've had an appeal filed in family cases, civil cases, even a traffic case along with criminal cases. So I am not really sure if people are just becoming more familiar with the process and they're more comfortable with it, if people are just not happy and are pursuing other avenues. I'm not really sure, but
I'm guessing that probably adds quite a lot of workload.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not super great.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, very good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have our EMS annual report with our EMS chief, Keith Melvin.
How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody staying warm? That's the key, right? So as we go through this report, please feel free to ask questions. You know, I love conversation. I love to talk. So, but I don't like to talk at people. I'd rather have conversations. So if you have questions, please, you know, fire them off and as we go through. So we're going to review our 2024 and just kind of going off of our pillars a little bit with the county. We're going to kind of start out with our health and safety. So some of the highlights of 2024 is we really implemented the firefighter rehab program where EMS goes to all fires. We pretty much have had 2 ambulances and a command staff at all fires with the goal of making sure that all of our firefighters come home and don't suffer a heart attack or stroke immediately after the fire. So as opposed to the old days where, you know, you may get a cup of coffee and a sandwich or something like that for rehabilitation, we actually do medical screening of the firefighters to make sure that they're not going to have a stroke or a heart attack. Or the vital signs, some of them we have, you know, put on cardiac monitors to be safe. And this last year, we actually caught 4 firefighters that were having medical issues on the fire ground, and we're able to transport them to the hospital where they received treatment and didn't end up going home and becoming a casualty. I unfortunately have gone to way too many of those funerals in my days. We continue with our driver education. We've got a new onboarding driver education process that we put all of our new hires through. And then we do once a year with the road courses just to make sure that we're maintaining our driver's education. We do our own annual bloodborne pathogens. We got to be a little bit more in depth than what we typically give to the county with our bloodborne pathogens and those types of things. Really been trying to focus on decreasing sickness, right? So we purchased some UV lights to kill the viruses and bacteria. So all 4 stations have the UV lights, and we run them through the day room, we run them through the bathrooms, we run them through the bunk rooms in order to kill off that bacteria and viruses in an effort to kind of keep our EMS staff healthy and at work and those types of things. So, and we have been putting them in the ambulances too. So it's an added protection. We also had to get bed bug ways to treat bed bugs. Unfortunately, we've responded to quite a few scenes where bed bugs were at the location. And if one of those attached to the bottom of your boot, you bring it back to the station, it ends up being a bed bug infestation. So we added in bed bug detectors, which basically the bug gets caught in a little dish and it can't get out, so that we would know that something was back at the station. And then we moved forward not just with the UV lights, but with there's like a heating system. So you bring the temperature up to a temperature that the bugs can't stand, and it stays that way for 24 hours. We also treat the ambulances in that same respect. So if one gets exposed and transported a person with bed bugs, it comes out of service, we put it into rehab, and it stays out for that period of time. We remain focused on our mental health programs. We started that critical incident stress management team a few years ago, and we did 4 critical incident debriefs with firefighters, police officers. Last year we were expanded out. We actually had a critical incident stress management with state assets, and that kind of started with the DNR. And just recently we had another critical incident stress management where the state police also attended. So police, fire, EMS are all kind of come to it, and it's kind of help us, talk about the bad event that we just saw. So you're not holding it in, right? Talking helps get that stress out, and it's been working really well. For those that are still kind of struggling with what they've seen or smelled or heard and those types of things, we've been working with DHS for individual counseling. So our crisis counselors, we have 3 crisis counselors on our critical incident management team. They'll set aside like an hour block and do one-on-ones and follow up with our EMS professionals afterwards for additional help if they need it. So across the board, I think one of the things that leads into mental health is really, benefit time. Are people using benefit time? And we had 255 shifts where people were able to use their vacation time, ETO, and those types of things to actually get off the ambulance and use their benefit time. So I think that's been working really good to keep people moving forward. There was a period of time where people really weren't using a lot of their benefit time. So, that mental break, getting off the ambulance for a little bit really kind of helps them reload and move forward. The picture on the left up there is actually one of our rehabs that we were called out to. And then you can see how happy Shauna is with her llama. There's a little farm out towards the east side of our county. Staying on that line, I'm going to give you the goods and the bads, right? Tonight, we're not trying to hide anything in our department. We did have one line of duty injury that resulted in some significant time off for the employee. We have the lifting mechanisms when we load the ambulance. The cot goes into a carriage and then it mechanically lifts for us. That system malfunctioned, and when the paramedic reached down to try to lift the carriage up, he suffered an injury to his arm. And ended up being out with surgery. Since that, he's moved on to another career and is no longer with the department. We did have 7 out. It's been a rough year for FMLA. We've had 7 out with long-term medical conditions, not stuff that's occurred on the job, but long-term medical conditions. So it was about 113 total days of FMLA, of having our full-time staff out on an FMLA. So, that really took a big hit, when you start looking at, part-timers and overtime and coverage and those types of things. We've only, surprisingly, we had 3 accidents, all of them deer strikes. The deers were hellacious this year. I think we weren't the only department to strike a few deers. To mitigate that, we're you can see the damage. That brush guard did absolutely nothing to protect the ambulance. Those brush guards are factory made. They come on the ambulances. They're lightweight aluminum, and at times actually cause more damage to the ambulances than if we didn't have the brush guard on it to begin with. So we have worked with Collision Clinic, and we're moving towards a more upgraded brush guard to protect all of these new ambulances that we've been getting and put them on there so that they can have an impact. So they're going to be steel brush guards. They've got double pipes in them and should be able to take impacts. They're also made so that we can, when we do buy new fleet, we can take them off of the old ambulances, transfer them over and move them forward. Our total maintenance cost of the fleet was around, just a little under $36,000 for the year. Luckily it came out around, $4,000 below budget for that ambulance fleet. As far as our internal team, we had an interesting year. We started our paramedic program back in August. We have 6 students that'll be, that are in the program. They're more than halfway. At Christmas time, they were halfway. They are actually in their ambulance ride time now, so they still go to school 2 days a week. They still work on the ambulance, and they come in an additional 12 hours every week to ride on the ambulance as a third person to get experience. I know this is 2025, but we had, like I said, we've had a hellacious year so far, even this year. And right now, 4 of the 6 students have all had the opportunity to innovate in the field, which is unheard of. Like, we don't even see that in the city departments. And we've been able to get that experience with 4 of our 6 providers already. Dr. Bosco, our medical director, is like, you guys innovate more than I do in the ER, so it's a good move. You can see here was one of our labs. We brought in lungs and deer hearts and kidneys. And we believe in doing things hands-on, not just in a textbook, and really getting them trained to the level that we want them to be at. So I'm really excited for them to finish out their last few months, and we'll gain 6 new paramedics on the service to replace our staff that'll be leaving. We had 2 EMTs that took the AEMT program. That's where they can at least start IVs and give some more meds and actually be in the back more time than they would as an EMT, which helps save that paramedic not having to write all the reports or be in the back for all of the transports. As far as our staffing and recruiting, it's kind of ebbs and flows. We've got people that are going to be retiring. We'll have some retirements coming this year, 2 or 3 retirements coming this year. We've had 3 left last year. 1 took a lateral transfer up to Wausau. His dream was always to be a paramedic firefighter. We don't do the firefighting part, so he left and went up to that direction. I had mentioned the 1 injury that left the field, and then Vicky O'Shea retired, which I think is one of the first full duty retirements, and so that was kind of cool to actually see somebody make it to retirement and take the WRS and enjoy life. So I was pretty happy about that. We have been keeping up with recruiting. We have been able to fill those positions. We kind of took a different stance. Instead of looking for paramedics, we've been looking for the right EMT basic. And when I say the right EMT basic, we're looking for people that have the right personalities. Steve and I can teach them how to do IVs. We can teach them how to run cardiac arrests. We can teach that stuff. I can't teach people to be nice. So we've been bringing them in as a part-timer and seeing how they react, see how they work with the patients. And then when the positions open up, we've been shifting from our part-time into a full-time position. That way, before we put somebody in the union and they're protected, we know what we're getting. If I take somebody straight off the street, everybody can smile in an interview. You need some time with them to really kind of know what you're looking for. As far as full staffing versus minimal staffing, we have 4 stations. And when I first took over, there was only we were missing 8 positions. 1 full shift was not filled. One of the biggest reasons that we were losing people is we were forcing people back to fill all 4 stations. So at the time, the previous management said, hey, we talked about it, and I said, are we okay with running 3 as a minimum and 4 as our full? Meaning we won't force somebody until we hit more than 2 people off on the shift. Then we'll have to do a force, because I don't think that we can run this county with a minimum of below 3. So we only force when we do that. So when we do that, we do it out of Wild Rose, because you can still hit the Wild Rose area within 15 minutes from Med 1. And so we keep the outskirts covered, we keep Med 1 covered. So at the end of the year, we did close the station 47 times throughout the whole entire year. But if you look at that FMLA statistic, where we had 113, we covered more than half of those shifts with volunteer people coming back in and still running and keeping the station open. So not forcing them, I mean, if you've got a plan or a birthday party and you get, hey, you're not going to be able to go home, that really messes with people's commitments and that kind of stuff. So it has been working pretty well. If we would have forced people, we would have been looking at about $105,000 additional out of our salary budget in forced overtime. So that's a good chunk of change. As far as our external teams, Steve and I still participate with all of the stuff at the state level. I spoke at WEMSA last year on mass casualties. Sit on the Regional Trauma Advisory Committee board. If you don't have enough interaction with your trauma committees in your local area, you do not qualify for grants. So depending on where the grants are coming from. So I stay very active, and I'm a board member on that, so that we don't get disqualified from any grants. We participate in the Washare County Fire Chiefs Association, which meets bi-monthly. We do a quarterly Tri-County EMS Directors meeting where we meet with Green Lake and Marquette and their EMS chiefs, and we rotate the locations and we talk about everything EMS that's hitting our area. One of the chiefs from Marquette also sits on one of the EMS Association's boards of directors. So we kind of talked to him about how we want to see things steered in the state. We went over to Marshfield and participated in the National Farm Medicine event, and I was a speaker there, and Adams County held a conference. And then Steve and I go to Fox Valley, Mid-State, and Moraine Park Technical Colleges, which all touch our county, and we sit on the advisory committees there for their public safety stuff. So we stay pretty busy with outside meetings and still running all of our inside stuff. As far as our customer service, we've been out and about in the county. Our tax mission this year was to get Stop the Bleed, and we've been really hard and heavy pushing the Stop the Bleed. We even got it into the schools, where we were working with Officer Hendrickson and teaching it over at the schools. We went over to law enforcement and taught with the sheriffs, and we've been kind of working together on that initiative. We still teach quite a few CPR classes out in the community. As far as partner education with our fire departments, we are still running our annual emergency medical responder course. That's every Thursday night. We actually have 20, we started in November with 25 students. So these are people that would have had to go all the way up to Fox Valley if they wanted to be an EMR. Most of them are firefighters, which means those firefighters will be gone out of our county to do the class, and it's a financial burden on the class. There's no cost to run it coming out of EMS for me, so we do not charge. If the local fire department, if they're going to run on a local fire department and the local chief says, yep, they're on my department, we do not charge the fire department for that class. We can't run our model of EMS without first responders. We need them there with the acreage that we have. We need them there fast and keeping people alive until we can get there. So anything that I can do to keep that first responder pool going is a huge initiative for me. And by doing this education, we keep them here in the county. We did break one of the classes early so that the responders could go to a fire. That it just works well, for our fire departments in the area. We still do a quarterly training with all the current EMRs. We host it either in Watoma or Wild Rose so that those first responders aren't too far away from their districts. And we do hot topics, and we sign off on their medical education so that they don't have to go outside and spend more money trying to find a refresher or beg a technical college to come down. We keep all of the current responders' licenses up and running for them. We've still maintained our partnership with Heartland Farms. They're a huge partner with us on agricultural rescue. They put a lot of money into our annual agricultural rescue extrication class that we run over there, and they want to continue that every year. So we've been running that on an annual basis also. Project Lifesaver. That's a program that we were able to bring back last year. That's where you put the locators on kids that may be special needs, autistic, those types of things, dementia patients, anybody that might take a trip is what we say, right? And we brought that back. We do have 2 people currently on the Project Lifesaver program that have gotten out of the house and gotten away from the parents. So we do have 2 of them on the locators. RTF in the schools, that's a huge topic, right? Especially after the Madison school shooting. Steve and I joke all the time from the standpoint of, if you look at Texas and the shooting that they had there, not only was the sheriff being held accountable for not going in with those kids, they also charged the EMS chief and the fire chief with dereliction of duty because they should have been in an incident command and stepped up and said something. So we really try to protect ourselves. We document all of our rescue task force training. We document all of our interactions with sheriffs. We document all of our interactions with the school administrators and what we're doing to help them bolster, so that if there was an event in the county and somebody says, hey, what did you guys do to prepare for an active shooter situation, which is what Madison is going through right now, we have the documentation that we can produce. So Steve and I always joke around that this is our legal file, to protect ourselves as we move forward with rescue task force and school shootings. The sheriffs has come together. They've taken a nice lead role with that in the county and is looking at putting programs into place. And we've been working hand in hand with them. So I think we're moving in a really solid direction with being prepared, unfortunately, for a response. When you talk about it, it's a response. It's not mitigation. It's not stopping it, but a response to a school shooting. A few years ago, we joined the Mavis division, and we continue to be called out of our area to back up big incidents across the state. We had an ambulance respond over with Toma Fire for the I-90 crashes that they've had over there. We're on their 5th level box alarm. We've been called down to the Dells area, and we get to still charge those patients. We don't bill the department for being part of Mavis. We can't, that's a Mavis agreement, but we can bill the patients that we transport. So, that's been working really well to expand our capabilities within WSHERA for getting experience. As far as public outreach, we like to have fun. We participate in all the parades, special events. We went to donkey basketball, and you can see Anna up there. She took one for the team and rode the donkey out there and played donkey basketball. There were several of the sheriffs with us. It was really a fun time. We've got a presence out at the county fair. Throughout the whole county fair, we upstaff and put a rig out there and are on location for responses. We participate in student education with Leif and his programs. Blue Ribbons Kids Days. We send ambulances over to things like the Operating Engineers Picnic when they, have around 10,000 people, employees and their families over there for their annual picnics. So, we stay really engaged with public outreach. We do quite a bit of public outreach. We also have sent out with the strategic planning team We have sent out stuff to the community. We are looking for feedback. I believe I started sending that stuff out just at the end of the year. We wanted to get a cross section for our strategic planning committee. So we looked at local partners. We have commitments from the school system because we do a lot with them. Craig Hayes from Wild Rose will be participating. We wanted to get people from across the county too, not all just Wautoma. Chief Mott, as a law enforcement person, will be joining us. Alex Peterson is the fire chief for Saxville. He's also an employee for us, so he's kind of in a dual role with Steve and I. Dr. Bosco, who's our medical director. And then we also have the director of health services from the prison, because the prison's probably our biggest customer when we look at running transfers and transports. So we wanted to try to get that from a cross section of our county to kind of help us move forward with our strategic planning. As far as major events, these were just a couple of them that Steve and I kind of remembered. We were part of the multiple agency response for the ice fishing tournament that they had last year. Remember, the ice conditions were failing. It was a pretty big response. It wasn't just Waushara. It was us, it was the sheriffs, it was the DNR, it was the conservation wardens, it was the Coast Guard. There were several, agencies that came together to put that week together, all of the activities for that week together in order to protect the ice fishers and be available for response immediately if somebody were to go through. We also participated in a tactical raid with the ATF in the county. We provided 2 ambulances to the federal ATF while they did a raid, and actually transported one of the suspects to the hospital with that raid. We've had 2 school bus incidents. We're looking at how we respond to school bus incidents and making sure that the county is protected legally with refusals and the schools are protected legally with the refusals. In the past, EMS wasn't too involved with the school bus crashes, and accountability for the students. Parents would pick up students and, you'd get there and be like, all right, who was always on the bus? And they're like, we don't know. That's an issue. So we've been working with the schools and the sheriffs on how we respond to school bus incidents. We talked about the pileup over in Toma with our response over there. On the 2024 presidential election, we did have an incident action plan put together for EMS, just with it being more contentious and the information that was coming out from the state with possibilities of hazardous materials. And we did get Narcan out to all the polling sites to help to protect the polling sites while they were opening mail and that kind of stuff if they were to ingest a substance. We did have a mass casualty out at Nordic Mountain last year. Some kids decided to go down on a tube altogether, on the same tube, and resulted in 6 trauma patients being transported out of Nordic Mountain that night. So they kept us pretty busy. We flew a few and we took a few by ground. As far as quality, the ambulance ran 3,245 requests for service. Out of that, 2,839 were 911 calls. When we look at our response times, our average out of shoot times are about 2 minutes and 32 seconds. When you're in trouble and you need a 911 ambulance, 2 minutes and 32 seconds is a long time. So we're looking at how do we decrease those times. We're not 100% sure on the accuracy of that, as dispatch has been kind of putting out multiple vehicles and that kind of stuff. We have noticed that they may not put our ambulance en route right away. We actually have that capability on our CAD system just to hit the button when we're pulling out the bay, and we think we can track that time a little bit better than waiting for dispatch to do what, finish up what they're finishing and actually hit the button to get us en route. It just kind of seems like not as much with the other response times, but that first one, because you got to remember, they're paging us, they're paging fire, they're paging police officers, everybody's going, so there's a lot for them to do, and I can see where that can easily be missed. So it's something that we could help out from the EMS side to get better data. I'm really proud of this next one. So when you look at the 911, our goal is to have a 911 ambulance to a house within 15 minutes anywhere in the county. Right now, our average is running 12 minutes and 14 seconds from the time they're paged to the time we get to the house. That's a huge statistic to take pride in. You know, we are getting there when people are in need. We spend about 25 minutes on scene with patients, stabilizing them prior to transporting them and taking them to definitive hospitals. I also wanted to add this statistic in for you guys this year is how many times did we have 2 ambulances running a call at the same time, 3 ambulances running a call at the same time, or 4. So you can see that 479 times out of the calls last year, 2 ambulances were toned out at the same time. The third ambulance, 109 times, and then 37 additional times that all 4 ambulances were called out to the scene, or 2 calls at the same time, at which point we would go to mutual aid and Marquette would then come in, or Green Lake, or Gold Cross, or Adams County would come over and help us out. We had 46 cardiac arrests that we worked in the field. Out of those, we got 6 people back. That's actually a really high number. It may not sound very high, but that's actually a really high number for return of spontaneous circulation. And I think that the life arms that we moved to getting last year really has made a big difference. When you can count on CPR and those compressions are consistent and we keep those patients perfused, we keep people alive, you know. We did respond to 101 vehicle accidents. You can see why I said the prison is such a huge partner of ours. We took 112 prisoners from the Red Granite Prison to the hospital, and then we took 37 out of the county jail throughout the year. We do go out to Nordic Mountain on a pretty regular basis with about 19 to 20 some every year transports off of the mountain. The last one at the bottom, if you look, I really just wanted to stress that, you know, if you go to a doctor and you have a heart issue, you go see a cardiologist, right? You got something wrong with your feet, you're gonna go see a pediatric, podiatry doctor. With us, we span all of them. So we had 130 times where it was pediatrics. You need to know what you're doing with the kids. There was 716 times, those were adult patients. And then the rest of that 2,839 were patients that were over 60 years old. So we can't specialize in one thing. We have to keep it broad and be ready to respond no matter what the age category of the patient is. So up here, you can see what our calls by month. You can see, I was kind of surprised, with our peak times that April was kind of a little bit slower and June was a little bit slower. But you can see we typically peak during the summertime and then come back into the fall and that kind of stuff with our call volume. Calls for the days of the week, Tuesdays and Sundays tend to be our slowest days. My staff that love to watch football, Tuesdays and Fridays, I had to change my trifocals there a little bit, are a little bit slower for us. Sundays tend to be a little bit slower too. My football watchers like that part because they at least get to see most of the game. But surprisingly, Monday is our biggest time. We also, by calls of time of day, usually we peak about 8 a.m. when our call volumes start to come up, and then they kind of remain consistent throughout the day, and then slowly start to peak back down as we go into the evening, and then kind of resetting at midnight and going through the next day. So they are not sleeping all the time. They are running calls. Only at 48.
But they're sleeping sometimes.
They're sleeping sometimes, for sure. To kind of put you at ease, we do a staff meeting at 8 o'clock every shift change. So when they work at 48 hours, at 8 o'clock on their first shift, we have a virtual meeting of all 4 stations. We talk about everything that's coming at us, hot topics, policy reviews, those types of things. And then that second morning, we don't do that. I'm not waking them up again and having another staff meeting. So we try to knock it all out on that first day. And then that second day, let them, get some rest after running all night and that kind of stuff. When we focus on our training on the first day too. As far as financial highlights, Station 1 opened. We had that grand opening back in January. Seems so long ago, but the opening went really well, and we were excited to show the public our new Station 1. Our ambulance that we got last year was a remount. This year is also a remount. It ended up being about $228,986 when it was all said and done, and that was with the ambulance loading system. Remember I told you that was one of the systems that failed that caused the injury. So we're replacing that specific one. All of them are at the 7-year mark and need to be replaced, meaning their maintenance programs won't cover them anymore. So we've been switching them out as we get new vehicles. And Stephen has been really good at selling the old stuff on surplus. As far as grants, we did get the ultrasounds. The ultrasounds have become vital. All 6 of those people that we talked about that we got back, all got ultrasounds of the heart. A lot of times you can't tell if you have them back or not. We're able to look inside of their chest and actually see their heart moving. And we know that, you know, we need to stabilize them, get their blood pressures up and that kind of stuff. So, you know, if you would have asked me 36 years ago when I started in this field, if we'd be doing ultrasound, I'd have said no way, but here it is. You know, we're using it and seeing a lot of positive results from it. We also were able to get the life arms. So all 4 stations, all 4 first out ambulances do have the thumpers on them, and we've been really successful with that. I think all of our first responders are really getting good at helping us get those on in a 2-step process. EMSMC has been a godsend for us. I'm not saying that we don't still do time. Steve commits a lot of time to our department financing and making sure, you know, if you're going to have somebody do your finances, you want somebody to stay on top of them. And Stephen really works hand in hand with EMSMC to make sure that we're balancing and things are moving in the right direction. He puts a lot of time into that. He is also moving forward, working with Sarah and Jess on the image trend reconciliation and getting all of those past issues closed up with image trend. As far as our budget, you know, we had that 4 million. We came in at about 157 of our expenditures that we were to the plus. So we used about 96% of our budget right now. We do have a few things that are just kind of trickling in that'll lower that a little bit, but we're pretty happy, you know, with kicking that back into the rollover. This is the big one for you guys, and just kind of noodle on this because I'm going to ask you guys to put in a SWOT analysis for EMS. I want you to think about when, you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What direction do your people want EMS to go? Are we here to protect the county? Are we here to make money? Are we here to at least try to offset what we can? Because this is a kind of a staggering statistic. So when I first came here, they were running transfers all over the state. They were going to Marshfield, they were going to Eau Claire, they were going to Madison, they were going to Milwaukee, which is pretty much why our fleet is pretty beat up right now. And we're slowly starting to recover from that with the new ambulances. We've scaled it back and we've only been doing our interfacility transports out of Wild Rose and Berlin, and surprise, surprise, our revenues have been maintaining about the same. So when you look at Wild Rose Hospital, which is here in our county, we took 177 transports from Wild Rose over to the Valley. Out of that, we've only recovered $124,414. That's what we have in our pocket right now from doing 177 ambulance transports. We have to write off some of it, Medicare and Medicaid, we can't overbill those patients. So 15,706 is what Medicare says that they're not paying. Now that we didn't lose that money, right? Because we're a service. If I say it's gonna take $5 and the government says, no, you're gonna take $2, it's not like my department is paying the other $3, right? It's a service. So we write those off at the end of the year. Now, out of collections, the amount that we currently moved over to collections is an additional $135,462 that has not been paid by patients that have been transported. So the insurances have paid, Medicare, Medicaid has paid what they're gonna pay, and that's what we have to go after to try to get back from patients. So, you know, when we're looking at that, you know, you're running at 151,000 of what you thought you might get, and you're not getting for those transports. 124,000 isn't even buying half of our new ambulances. All right, so we're beating up our fleet with moving these patients. You start to add Berlin into that mix. We took an additional 96 patients out of Berlin Hospital for them and moved them up there. 89,000 is what we recovered, 90 if you round it up, right? 78,000 we wrote off, or 7,800 we wrote off for Medicare, Medicaid, and we're still trying to recover an additional 35,000 from patients that didn't do that. So, you know, EMSNC is doing our collections. They take them to SDC. Yeah, state debt collections and TRIP and that kind of stuff, but you may get 25% of that back. So this is our bad debt that we're sitting on.
I know we usually wait to then. You said you liked to.
Yeah, go for it, brother.
So if you factor in the 113 prison transports, are you reimbursed for those as well too?
100%, yeah.
Okay, I was just questioning because we're
They
granted.
100% of the Medicaid, right?
We make almost twice as much off of prison runs a year as we do on every transfer nursing home return combined.
We really wish we had a federal one because they pay your actual rate, not just
Not just the Medicare rate, they
yeah.
pay whatever you charge in the federal prison for some reason.
Fire department or Red Granite Police Department running the different calls over there too.
yeah,
And we got DOC to start reimbursing that last year. So
yeah.
that's
it's
the way I.
Yeah. So, and I can tell you, we missed transports out of the prison while we were doing these transfers. Because when you look at this, all of these transports that we took for Theta Care, and these are Theta Care patients. It's really their responsibility to move the patients from their hospital system. We didn't ask them to pull specialists out of Berlin, specialists out of Wild Rose, and put them at one main hospital to keep their system making money, right? That's not what our county asked for. So we're doing their job for them by moving their patients, where other hospital systems have their own private ambulances, right? 819 hours out of the year, your closest ambulance was not there because they were doing a transfer. So that means Med 5, Med 2 on the days that it was up. That's a huge amount of time. Those ambulances and resources are out of our county and not available to 911 if we need to get somebody there fast. We kind of talked about with the Public Safety Board how our Red Granite area is rough, right? And Poisippi, it's not a quick shot for us to get to Poisippi or, you know, to Bloomfield up there. It takes some time. It takes us at least 20, 25 minutes coming out of Watoma. And that's me cooking, you know, to get up there. So, you know, I just want you to think about that. And I ask you to put a SWOT analysis in. You know, think about what our strengths are. Think about what our weaknesses are. What's our opportunities? For me, when I look at how do we grow revenue, we grow revenue through population. If the county can attract more families, if the county can attract more tourists, that's how EMS makes more money, right? Not through trying to supplement it by doing the job of the hospital, but by protecting the people that are here in the county. So as we look at as a county, what direction do we need to go? If we want to offset that budget more, that's what we need to think about is how are we getting families here? How are we getting people and that kind of stuff? So that's where the more calls you run for 911 and you're available, that's how we do it. And I want to say that also think about all of the time that we're putting in training. I trust our paramedics more than I trust private ambulance paramedics. And I say that from the standpoint of we put a lot of time and honor in our training. I know without a doubt that the calls that have occurred over the last 2.5 weeks and our 4 of 6 students that have gotten intubations, we are aggressive. We know that we're in a rural area. If we're not aggressive, our people die. And we have to be aggressive. You don't see that in a lot of other places. And the focus on medicine here is really what I'm proud of and the paramedics that work forward for that. So I think those are huge wins for 2024 is the focus on education, the focus on quality assurance, admitting what we screwed up, learning how not to do it again, and getting out there and having a better outcome for our public, so. Yeah,
So these transports, are these mainly from hospital to nursing home or
no, that's hospital to hospital.
it's hospital to hospital?
Yeah, we don't get paid anything for a hospital to nursing home because in Washera County, we have no nursing homes.
Okay.
They are all considered
CBRF, like
Yeah.
community-based living facility.
community-based living facilities, and the nursing homes did that because there's less regulation on them if they'd make that move. But we actually eat any cost, like when we go pick somebody up and take them back from the hospital, and we only do it for county residents out of Wild Rose or Berlin, hospital. If we took them in, we'll take them back. Sometimes we'll actually call that CBRF and say, hey, we know you have a van. This person walks. We're not taking that ambulance out of service. We're not getting anything for it. That person can ride in a van, So we do try to hold them a little bit accountable. That's a good question. Any other questions? I brought Steve. He's my number guy.
What questions I have? I
Yeah.
got a couple eyeball questions.
All right.
You're talking about the UV lights for killing bugs or
Yeah.
sickness and stuff. How fast does that work?
1 hour. We leave them on in the room for 1 hour.
So is it like multiple lights? You move it into the room and
Yeah, it's a portable light. You just bring it in and you set it in the middle of the room and shing,
no kidding.
whatever the light's hitting, it's killing.
It only disinfects what it's touching, so like if my binder's sitting here, if like it's the ambulance, we'll have them go in, flip everything over, move everything around, or move objects and then turn it on again. The backside of it wouldn't hit only with the light touches.
What's the cost on a UV light like that?
We actually went with some that were pretty cheap because we do have paramedics. I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, but if you take 2 EMS workers and you put them in a room with 2 bowling balls and you come back in an hour, one's gonna be lost and the other's gonna be broken. So we did go with some low cost ones that way if they did get damaged, it wasn't too bad to be able
They
to
were-
replace.
$110, $120, something like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the bed bug one, you said that you heat treat, like you're physically raising the room temperature?
Yeah, we bought the heaters and it comes with a main one and then multiple offshoot heaters and you place them around the room. And you bring the temperature of that room up and then you gotta maintain it at that temperature for 24
Yeah.
hours.
It's a fancy space heater with 6 plugs on it so that you can plug it in multiple outlets, so you don't pop like a fuse, don't pop a breaker with a thermostat on it.
Okay.
So
It's a lot like,
temperature are you taking it up to?
is it 119 or 121? It's a weird number.
Yeah.
It's whatever number they die at.
I would have to defer to our protocol because we wrote a protocol on how to do it.
So you, how often do you have to do that? It's just.
Just the one time, yeah, just the
Look at
one
the
time.
only
It
ones that
Okay, it just.
What do you mean, how many times have we had bed bug stuff?
Well, no, how many times have you had a scare where you've used that method, like?
More than 5 this year. Where
Oh,
we,
yeah.
easily more than 5.
But and then that temperature like kills them?
Yeah.
Okay.
When-
The spray chemicals don't work anymore. As soon as they hit hardware stores, people would spray them, but not enough. So the ones that survived would then live and reproduce and became stronger. Kind of like people like taking like antibiotics, but don't take all of them, and then you get big viruses or bacteria that nothing can kill. So as soon as it hit hardware stores, they all became ineffective. Now only heat works for them. They're all immune to all the chemicals now.
So when I worked in the cities, if, there was bed bugs there, you had to call a commander, they showed up with baggies. You got in the back of the ambulance, you were stripped of all your clothes, they put it into bags, they were taken to be professionally cleaned. You took your ambulance back, it went out of service, they put it in either the UV and the heat treatments. And then you had to get, spare clothes on and everything else and a new ambulance before you could even be back in service. So they took that spread. Literally, it just takes one little bug in a ribble of your shoe and your house is infested,
Yeah, my wife didn't want to let me back after a mission trip one time. It happened. I have one last question for you. So you were talking about 6 students, 4 innovated. What does that mean?
So that's where, if you're watching any of the medical shows on TV, where they take the tube and they go in the person's mouth and they put the tube down into their lungs and breathe for
Yeah,
them, that's innovating.
okay.
Yeah, so. And that's not the total innovations that we've had. Those are just our students that have been able to get them. We do innovate quite a bit. So in the state of Wisconsin, a paramedic actually has the capability outside of a doctor and a nurse anesthetist. We carry the same medications that surgeons do in surgery. So we could take somebody that's as alert as you are in a medical condition right now. We give you sedation, we put you to sleep, we paralyze your body, we intubate you, we put you on a ventilator, and we take you to the hospital. We don't even bag anymore. Like, we bag for a little bit and then we set up a ventilator just like a respiratory therapist does at a hospital. We put you on a ventilator, we take you to the valley.
Okay.
Pretty technical, Again, the ventilator thing, would have never thought I saw that in 911 service, That was like, only flight medics could do that back in the day. Now we're all doing it.
You said you take, you call, first responders
Yes.
for every, no, that's from the volunteer fire department, is that correct?
Yes, we have 13 first responder groups in the state, in the county that we run with. And we really work hand in hand with them.
How difficult is that for them, like for during the day? You could say most of your calls are during the day, I would think.
We don't get a high response during the daytime, volunteerism is rough right now in America. And the fire departments really struggle. Most of the times we get one volunteer during the daytime. At night, it's, the response is usually covered. Most of the time during the day, we get one, if not any. That's why we have been going, we did shift our response model where if anything is critical, somebody is pulseless, non-breathing, car accident with unknown amount of patients, all of our falls that might need to be intubated because they hit their head. We send the 2 closest ambulances to that call. That way we've got more of our own staff there. We can manage that call. And I think that's why we're seeing a huge increase in patient saves that we've been having in the field, because we have been getting more of our technical advisors there. Steve and I get on scene, we direct the scene. That frees up 4 people to focus on patient care. That's a huge part. There could come a time where the fire departments can't sustain that, and what does that model look for us, and us at least backing up. So by at least going on the critical calls, it really starts to set us up for if that system were to fail, that we're not uncomfortable with helping each other out.
Good, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
I just got a comment. I like the way you did your report, following the pillars.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. That's really informative. And then thank you for sharing headwinds with us. And you're addressing headwinds, which is great in your department. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
That's one last thing.
Yeah.
I haven't overdone my questions, have I?
No, not at
One more? One, okay. What kind of contract do we have with DataCare right now?
So that's a double-edged sword. Ruth and I looked at that. I had talked to Marshfield Fire because they help support Marshfield Medical Center when they can't take the transports. Marshfield Medical Center has their own ambulance, but sometimes there's more transports than what they can take. If you sign that, it starts to mess with our ability to bill Medicare, Medicaid, and get those reimbursements. And then you also are dedicating an ambulance to them. It's not like they can call and you can be like, right now if Berlin calls and all 3 of our rigs are out, or 2 of my ambulances and I only have 1 in the county, I'm telling them no. If we sign a contract with DataCare, we can't tell them no. If they're paying for the offset, then we can't tell them no. And then technically we've really rented out an ambulance, one of our 4 ambulances to Theta. So it's really a double-edged sword, and Steve has seen it in the southern area go awry with some of the services and not be the best plan to actually contract with the hospital.
So we're not under contract right now?
No, we can say no to Berlin. I can tell you, if we say no to Wild Rose, the doctors stomp, kick their feet, call me in the middle of the night, yell at me. And I'm like, there's not much I can do. We have no ambulances in the county. You're gonna have to.
A lot of it, especially Wild Rose, I don't ever see a time where if somebody's having like an actual heart attack, a stroke, like they need surgery because of a massive trauma. We've never said no to Wild Rose, and I don't ever see a time where we ever would. We're talking about a patient that has like an IV started, they're sleeping, resting in their room. They don't have staffing at these smaller hospitals to watch them overnight because they have a procedure scheduled tomorrow or the next day in Appleton or Neenah or Oshkosh. And it's whether or not it's justifiable for us to take a crew out of service at 2 a.m, possibly hit a deer, possibly fall asleep, or let the smaller hospital figure it out on their own for a patient that's not going to receive any immediate care till 8 a.m, 10 a.m. the next day at that bigger facility.
But they're not nice when we say no. Like, to give you an idea, the Coloma Fire, right? We're at the Coloma Fire. I've got one ambulance available for 911 in the county that's not committed to the fire. All of the rest of us were here at the fire. We had Berlin over at the fire with us. We had Marquette over at the fire with us. And one of the physicians called me in the command room yelling at me because we can't take this patient over to Neenah. And it wasn't an emergent patient that wasn't going for surgery. They weren't having a heart attack or stroke, and literally berating me on the phone because we wouldn't take that transport for them. So I, instead of managing that, then had to turn to calling Gold Cross and actually begging their administrator to help out their own hospital and send an ambulance to get that patient transported. But I mean, it was not a comfortable conversation. I think in the past, Wishare's just always done, and bitten that, but we've kind of pushed back a little bit. If I only have one ambulance, I'm not gonna send that out of the county and have to have somebody wait for Marquette or Berlin or somebody to come and deal with a 911 call. That's just not acceptable to me.
We're sympathetic to the hospital's situation that they need these patients transported to other facilities. It's just whether or not it's justifiable for everyone else in the county to pay for that if we're gonna lose money on that interaction, or if somebody else is having a true emergency and that's something that could wait, to have that person wait at a hospital where they are receiving care while somebody else would have to wait longer at their house where they were bleeding and not receiving any care at all.
So if you had a patient that was critical, you would take that?
Yeah, we always take it.
Absolutely.
Always.
I've
take it.
never said no and
Yeah.
never would.
So if this board were to put something in place that we didn't want EMS doing any transports that weren't emergency, is that kind of what you're asking us to
I think it's
consider
something
in the
that
SWOT
we need to,
analysis?
I think it's something that we need to look at outside of taking care of our own county. I think supporting Wild Rose is an important step. They tell us they do a lot for us, outside of our medical director. That's all they give us. We don't get medications from them. They took that away. They wouldn't reprogram our pumps. They said that was their proprietary information. They don't do a lot to help us out outside of the medical director position, and that we can have anybody in the state that we want. There are medical director positions all over the state. So it's not like we're married to Theta outside of our contract. Right.
Pay them plenty.
We pay them a lot of money for their medical direction. You have to have an oversight physician. But we've got other medical directors that Steve and I have worked with in the state that we know would be willing to step up if we ever severed that. But I think it's something that we need to look at. I think if we don't throw it out on the table and at least discuss it more in depth, I wouldn't want you guys to make a decision, tonight or at your next meeting or anything like that. But I think as we go through the strategic planning process and we kind of see what the public wants and what you guys want, and what Megan and Ruth and John, what everybody's thinking of what we want for our model of EMS to move forward, that we do it right through the strategic planning process.
Thanks a lot, Keith.
Yeah.
Very good discussion.
Wanted to say, Keith, I think your 6 cardiac saves is extremely impressive.
Thank you.
Having worked in the field, that's incredible. Really good job.
They are really, really working hard. Proud of them.
Pretty obvious. Okay, very good, Keith. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thanks. Okay, now we'll have a strategic planning update with our community development educator, Tim Brewer.
All right, good evening. Let's go to the next slide here. So here we are, we're at a quarterly update, it came fast. And I'm just gonna try to make this pretty quick for all of you. If you have questions, again, just like Keith had said, feel free to ask away. Right now, your department heads here are working on collecting the SWOT data as Keith already mentioned. I share this graphic with you here about the weaknesses, threats, strengths, and opportunities. This is really how they're divided out. This is why we do a SWOT. Your strengths and your opportunities are your positives. Your weaknesses and your threats are your negatives. And then if you look from the vertical perspective, strengths and weaknesses are internal and they are controllable by department. And then threats and opportunities come from the outside. They're your external factors and you can't control those. You can't control what opportunities come your way. You can't control what threats come your way. But of course, we know you can respond to them. And that's what strategic planning is all about, is responding to those things. So just that's kind of like SWOT from a, why do we do the SWOT perspective and how does it all actually work? Next slide. Here's a graphic. As of this weekend, we've had 206 SWOTs completed countywide for all departments. So that is positive news. A bunch of departments have been posting the SWOTs in hard copy on their counters. I just snapped a quick picture here of the extension office. We have the SWOT available, hard copy, English and Spanish. And then for any of you that are talking to other people or yourselves or whatever, if you do fill out a hard copy of the SWOT, we encourage you to turn that into that basket in the extension office. We really, it states that on the SWOT itself, but we don't want people feeling like they're filling out a SWOT form and then turning it into a basket at that office, wondering if the people that are there are gonna read it, you know, be upset or whatever by what was said. So that's why we encourage everyone stop in at the extension office and drop it in the basket there. Let's see, next page. Okay, I wanted to stop right here real quick to share with UW Extension. I just want to be clear for everybody that the benefits of UW Extension aren't just the fact that you have educators here, like myself or Adam or Heidi or you know, Rosie working at the office here. You might remember in November, Carl Green from the local government education department came and spoke about the property taxes. He came and did that for the board that night. The other thing I want to mention here is this Max QDA. So I'm sorry if I get really excited about this, but I am a nerd, former math and physics teacher. I like data, and I think data is really important. And through my work with the UW Extension and some of the colleagues and such that I have at the state level, I was put in contact with a couple of data people and set up a virtual meeting with one of them a couple of weeks ago and told them what we were doing with the mission, vision, and values for the county. And I said, part of the issue here is how to analyze qualitative data well. So quantitative data, real quick math lesson, quantitative data is your numbers. That's easy to measure. There's whatever number of people here. That's quantitative. It's a quantity. Qualitative is much harder to analyze because it's people's opinions or ideas. And so I was sharing this with this person from the UW Extension, and he said, you know, Tim, UW has a license for some software that is made specifically for analyzing qualitative data. And I got kind of interested and I said, so how does a person get their hands on this software to be able to put all this data in and then analyze it? And he said, well, I do a little digging, but I think there might be a license available in the UW system yet. So he got back to me a couple days later, said, Sure enough, I talked to my superior. He said, go ahead, give you a license for this software. So I want all of you to know that this is another added benefit of partnering with Extension in the county, is I now have a license for this software that we will be putting all of the SWOT data in and analyzing for the departments as we move forward. I could go into the ins and outs of it, but it gets deep. But I want you to know that it's not just your educators here who are doing good things. It's really the connections that we have outside of here too that benefit the county, and this being one of them. Next page. Number two, what department heads are doing. They're compiling existing data sources. So I know that one of the main goals of the strategic planning is succession planning. We want to make sure that our departments are set in the case of a department head moving on, retiring, needing to take FMLA, whatever it might be. And so in the process of strategic planning, we have the department heads are compiling their current data sources. So we hope, number one, that with compiling all the sources of data they currently collect, that will set up a place where in terms of a succession, that's all in one place. So it's not just in someone's head anymore. It's actually on a sheet that somebody can step in and look at and say, oh, here is where I gather all the data from for this department. This is how I measure this, et cetera, et cetera. It also will speed up the process of the strategic planning because we don't have to go through the SWOT data, start creating goals, and then talk about, okay, what data do we even have, or what data do we need? We'll have a list already, and we can just go down that list and pick off of it to gather what we have, what we need. It just makes everything more efficient. That's task 2. Next page. Task 3, building the teams. So department heads right now are building their strategic planning teams. We are trying to be flexible with that, of course. Some departments are much larger than others. And so I've had some great conversations with department heads, brainstorming sessions about who do we have on the team? Who should I invite? Would this person be good? Just every question you can imagine, really, from department heads, and that's been fantastic. So department heads are putting those together, and then teams should be together by middle of February, and then also the SWOT is closing middle of February as well. Next page. And then finally, the administration department is leading the way. I think I may have mentioned this at a previous meeting, but administration department is going to do this first as kind of number one, a model for the others of how to do it. And number 2, just kind of work out some of the kinks and bugs so that other departments don't have to go through those things. The administration department will take the lead, take that head on, and do that work ahead of everybody else, modeling the strategic planning. That was really fast. Those are the 3 tasks department heads are working on. And questions, anybody?
Anybody have any questions for Tim? No? Very good. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we'll move into part B, discussion possible action items. I is the amendments to rules and bylaws of the Waushara County Board of Supervisors. And you had seen those, you got those in the in your packet. So with that, is there a motion to accept? Motion by Peterson, second by Mr. Gray. Is there any discussion? All right, proceed to vote on those.
Mr. Bossard?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the amendment passes. Update capital improvement plan threshold for non-IT capital assets from $5,000 to $10,000. Is there a motion? Okay, motion by Mr. Urban. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Kirschner. Is there any discussion on this? Or does anyone want any explanation?
So this is to update our current policy to meet the state and federal grant guidelines so that the finance department doesn't have to categorize things in different ways for each program. It will be consistent.
Okay, any questions? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote.
Mr. Bossard,
Yes.
Okay, and that action passes. All right, and C is consideration possible action on the following resolutions. Resolution number 01-01-25, a resolution supporting Hilbert Communications LLC's application for BEAD funding. And that is the parent company, I think, for Bug Tussle.
That is Bug Tussle.
Yeah, it's Bug Tussle. So is there a motion to accept that? Okay, motion by Ms. McCormick, second by Mr. Gray. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote.
Mr. Bossard,
Yes.
Okay, that resolution passes. Resolution number 02-01-25, a resolution supporting Bertram Communication LLC's application for BEAD funding. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Piaski. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Urban. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on that.
Mr. Bossard,
Yes.
Okay, and that resolution also passes. All right, and we are skipping the third one in there. So we'll move right into appointments. The first one is for Aging and Disability Services, formerly the Commission on Aging, and that is David Bossert from Neshkuro, term from now through April of 2026. Is there a motion to accept David? Okay, motion by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion?
What do we know about this David
I
guy?
don't know, you know, he's not always with us, but.
Sorry.
Okay, I guess all in favor? All right, then we'll move into the Library Services Committee. We have Jim Miller from Hancock. His term would be January 2025 through January 2028. And Jeannie Macbeth from Granite, her term would be March of 2025 through March of 2028. Is there a motion to accept these? Okay, motion by Mr. Waddle, second by Mr. Kirschner. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? All right, and it passes as well. All right, with that, then I would look for any board suggestions for future agenda items. Is there anything anyone would like to bring forward? Okay, seeing none, then I would look for a motion to adjourn. So motion by Mr. McCormick, second by Mr. Rubin. All right, you're adjourned. Thank you.